Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the first CHRO South Africa webinar of 2022. Happy belated Valentine's. I think it is officially the end of Happy New Year. And, compliments, I think we can now put those phrases behind us until next year. I'm very happy about that. It's been a long month of compliments and season's greetings. Thank you for joining today's conversation. My name is Sungula Nkabinde. If you have been living under a rock for the past 2 years, I am the community manager at CHRO South Africa. And today we'll be discussing deskless employees and how to keep them engaged in your organization. Please, as you joined the webinar, say hi in the chat. I don't know what setting your chat box is on, but you want to make sure that it's set to everyone. So instead of addressing it to hosts and panelists, you want to make sure you address your chats to everyone so that everybody can see what you have to say. So today we're discussing a very important topic. It's talking about deskless employees, and these are the people who do not have access to, don't sit at a desk the whole day and are able to respond to mails and complete surveys and so forth. And we're going to be discussing how to keep those particular kinds of employees engaged within your organization. Now, whether they're on the factory or the manufacturing plant, behind the till or on the road, deskless workers are the heart of many businesses. Without them, operations will come to a halt. And because they're physical distance from upper management, deskless employees are often less engaged section of the workforce, while being directly impacted by the organization's weaknesses, whether this be in the form of rigid policies, inconsistent communication, or outdated technology. So today we'll be exploring how to better connect with these employees who have been left behind as technology continues to transform the world of work. And joining us to discuss this topic is SmartWage Head of Product and Co-founder Caroline van der Merwe. We also have Tsebo Solutions CHR Elani Kruger, and also Nando's HR Director Bridget Murphy. Thank you to all three of you, and thank you for joining. Now, fantastic. Yes, what we're going to do is going to start by handing over to Caroline, who is going to kind of frame the discussion for us with the presentation. Give us a sense of what we need to be thinking about with regard to the challenges when it comes to engaging with deskless employees. So myself and the other panelists will go off cam, and then you take it away for the next 10 or 15 minutes, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Sungula. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you everybody for joining us. We hope we can bring you some interesting insights from our journey this morning. So I want to start by talking about communication. We all know that communicating with employees is very difficult, even at the best of times. But when you are dealing with a distributed and deskless workforce, it becomes that much more difficult. And so what we want to discuss today is solutions that are contextually relevant in South Africa. And at SmartWage, we work at the interface between employer and employee. And we've talked to a huge number of employers over the last couple of years about these challenges, and we've learned a lot along the way. I'm really excited to be here today with Bridget and Elani, because these are two exceptional HR leaders who have taken huge strides to address this problem of equitable communication with desk-based and deskless employees. And so I'm really excited that they've decided to join us today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a little bit of scene setting and go into why this is such an important topic and how we can begin to address these issues. So the first question to ask ourselves is, why is communication so important? What benefits accrue to the employer from communicating well with our employees, regardless of whether they're in a retail store, on the factory floor, or in our offices? And the first of those is efficiency. Anytime that we have a bottleneck in the business or there's a customer need that we need to respond to, it's very important to give our employees the tools to solve that problem as quickly as possible. And that speaks directly to the efficiency of your business. The quicker that you can communicate a change or communicate something that enables somebody to solve a problem, the better your business outcomes will be. The second thing is engagement. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this term because it's kind of an airy-fairy term and it means different things to different people. But for the context that we're talking about today, engagement really means the employee's emotional connection with what the business is trying to do, the business's vision. And that also sounds a little bit airy-fairy, but let's bring it down to a more practical level. If you think about an engaged employee is somebody who's focused on the task at hand and the work at hand. On the other hand, an unengaged employee is worried about things like the future of the company or not knowing how to do their job extremely well, questions about their pay and compensation, and all kinds of worries that the employer is actually empowered to resolve, but in many cases is unable to because of the challenges of communication. And so an engaged employee is a better employee, and there's plenty of research to back that up. And finally, performance. And I think really performance is a trickle-down effect of a better efficiency and higher engagement among employees. And in fact, the research shows that companies with highly engaged employees are 21% more profitable. And so it's really compelling to take something that we think is perhaps a nice to have, like really engaging and communicating with your employees, and realize that this is very fundamental to the success of our businesses. So now that we understand a little bit more about the importance of communications, I want to go into why is it so difficult to communicate effectively with our employees? And now I am going to turn my attention specifically to deskless employees. And just as a reminder, a deskless employee is just somebody who doesn't sit at a desk. So that could be somebody who works in a retail store, in a hotel, a construction worker, someone who works in mining or manufacturing. And so these make up the bulk of employees in South Africa. So if you look at what we've got up on this slide, it's some logos of some of our favorite workplace tools that help us improve the way that we work and communicate and help us with our HR. My personal favorite is Slack. So myself and my team are on Slack constantly. It reduces the email back and forth for us, and it helps us stay in touch as a remote team. We know that things like Zoom and Microsoft Teams saved us all during the pandemic and allowed us to continue with our operations. The commonality among all of these logos up here is that they are aimed at desk-based workers. And that's a very important thing to note about a lot of the innovation that's taking place in the HR and the sort of workplace technology space at the moment, is that all the focus is going to improving the lives of desk-based workers and improving their efficiency and giving them the tools to do their jobs better. And that leaves us as South African managers in a little bit of a difficult spot because there's not a lot of innovation happening regarding workers who are deskless. And that's a huge problem because it means that we're not left with the tools that we need to communicate efficiently and then get the benefits of communicating efficiently, which are engagement, efficiency, and higher productivity. So that's a huge challenge for us. And I'll give you a practical example. I was in a retail store a few weeks ago of one of our new clients, and I spoke to somebody whose job was admin manager. And I spoke to him about like what some of his challenges were. And he said he spends a lot of time helping his employees gain access to their personal information on their ESS platform, the employee self-service platform. When an employee needed to book leave or when an employee needed to check their pay slip and make sure that they've been paid correctly for overtime, they went to him. And the reason for that is the other way to access the ESS was online by setting a password, using your own data, et cetera, et cetera. And many employees found this incredibly challenging. And the easiest way was to go to the admin manager. What the admin manager then did was impersonate each of those employees and log in as if he were that person. He would log their leave that way and then log out and log in as himself to go and approve that leave. And he would provide them with access to information on their pay slips, such as the deductions that were coming off their pay slips. Now, in the tech world, this is what we refer to as a workaround. That's a person who, in their own innovative way, is making up a solution to the problem. But where there's a workaround means there's a gap for something new, a new product and a new solution that does suit the work environments that we're talking about. I want to ask Sungula to put up a poll now to ask you all about your experience with employee communications. Okay, so just for everybody's reference, if you had to estimate what percentage of South African employees actively engage with the internal communications provided by their employers. Some really interesting answers coming through here. Seems like the majority of people say between 20 and 40%. Okay, we're going to give you a few more seconds to answer. So if you haven't yet, get your answer in so we can see what the results are. Okay, I think we're going to end the poll there. So that's really interesting. 41% of you say it's between 20 and 40%. 26% of you say that it's between 40 and 60%, and only 3% of you think it's over 60%. 0 of you think it's more than 80%. But the people that are right are the less than 20% category. So we see that figure somewhere around about 8%. Okay, so 33% of you got that answer totally right. It's a really interesting one to think about. And if you think about how many communications people are bombarded with, it's really an important thing to remember when we communicate with our employees that tons and tons of email that comes through to them perhaps isn't read or ingested properly. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about solutions now, if I may. So what are the solutions? How do we communicate best with our employees? These are a couple of the categories that are currently employed to communicate properly. The first is what I'll call the middleman, and it's kind of a trickle-down format of communications. So that is, if you're a distributed workforce, you as the HR manager or the senior manager in the organization sends out an emails to all your store managers or your team leaders, for example, and you send them a message and you say, please share this information with your teams. Now, it's important to note that this is a very important tool in your toolkit for communicating with your employees, because you do want high engagement between managers and team leaders and employees. But what happens is that you have no control over how consistently that message is delivered, and even whether it's delivered at all, and least of all, how that message is actually received by your employees. So if you can imagine environments where you have 4 or 5 shifts starting every day, is that message being delivered consistently to everybody who starts on that shift every single day? And what happens to people who are not on shift and that message falls down the priority list? So you can see there's a few holes in that methodology and relying on a middleman communication. The second one is something that's very popular and has been in use for about the last 20 years, which is an on-site device. And that is something that we sometimes call a kiosk. And that's when we place a tablet or a computer in a common area, such as a canteen, and we allow employees to log in and get information, communications, and update their details, for example, at the kiosk. Now, again, this is an important tool. It is, however, a passive tool of communication, meaning that we rely on the employee to come to the kiosk to log in and get that information. So if you have any kind of urgent messaging that you want to get out to your employee, it may be another month before that employee logs into that kiosk again. So it can be a useful self-service tool, certainly, but it's not going to be your solution to broad communication to your entire workforce. Finally, there's the personal device. And I think that at the moment, this is our best bet. And the reason why this is such a good solution is that firstly, basically 100% of people have a personal device, a mobile phone, whether that's a feature phone or a smartphone. We find that very few examples of people who don't have phones, and sometimes it's a temporary situation where they've lost their phone or something like that. The second thing is 100% of people with personal devices are looking at that device multiple times a day. So you solve the problem of timing and the immediacy of getting a message to your employees. And so at the moment, we feel that the personal device is probably your quickest and most efficient method of getting a communication to your employees. But even personal devices come with certain challenges. And I want to talk about 3 of those before I hand back over. The first is devices. So sometimes we have an issue with the quality of the device or consistency among devices. So many people still use feature phones that don't allow us to download apps, for example, or perhaps don't have a web browser where people can click on a link and get information. The second issue is data. And we all know data is incredibly expensive in South Africa, and many of our employees will run out of data and won't be able to top that up for another couple of days. So these are the ones we talk about most often as challenges to communicating on personal devices. The one that I think is the most significant that we often forget to talk about is digital literacy. Now, to kind of bring this home for everybody, think about the last time in your organization that a new tool was rolled out, whether that was Microsoft Teams at the beginning of the pandemic, or you used a new CRM for managing your customers. There was a lot of change management involved. There was a lot of training involved. And I'm virtually sure that there was low uptake at the beginning, and there was considerable effort to bring people up to speed. So digital literacy is not a given. People need a little bit of hand-holding. And when we are dealing with, particularly with lower income workforces, people do not necessarily have email. So the very task of setting a password and verifying your profile via your email is impossible for many people. And that's why a lot of the companies we've spoken to have tried to build employee engagement and communication apps, and they have failed purely because of the lack of digital literacy of their employees. And so that's a very important thing that we have to keep in mind when we think about communicating best with our employees. So I hope that sets the scene for everybody. And I know I'm looking forward to what Ilani and Bridget have to say about how they've tackled these challenges. And I'll hopefully get a chance to talk a little bit more about how we've come up with some solutions to these too. Thank you, Sangula.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that kind of overview, Caroline. I think it gives us a good picture of what the issues are. Ilani, if you'll join us. I think it'll help to kind of give a sense of, on the floor, what this is looking like in an organization like Cyber Solutions, where a large proportion of the workforce is based on the premises of your clients, which presents a different challenge on its own. Can you elaborate for us?
Yes, thank you, Sangula, and thank you for having me. Very interesting, and everything that was shared by Caroline resonates with me. And I think a lot of the things that we've looked at Cebu actually has touch points in terms of this or the presentation that was made. So if you look worldwide, and you see that about 80% of employees, or 2.7 billion of employees, are desk-based. I then looked at Cebu's stats basically, and almost 97% of our employees are desk-based. So you're talking about more than 30,000 of our employees are not desk-based, being deskless employees. And therefore, as you rightly mentioned, most of them are at our client sites. So what we had to look at in the business was really to look at what is our end-to-end life cycle, and how do we map that according to actually our deskless environment? Because it doesn't help for us to have this whole HR strategy that centers around desk-based employees, because it makes out a very small proportion of it. And actually, to manage and get that communication, as Caroline mentioned, with desk-based employees is quite easy. But actually to connect with your deskless employees is a bit more of a challenge. And I think I've mentioned to you that when we started off in Cebu, when I started here about 4.5 years ago, the one thing that was evident was that the digitization strategy was lacking. We were still using leaf books with the yellow and pink and blue and white pages. And we didn't even access the employee self-service. All the pay slips, etc., was not electronically received, etc. And there was definitely a gap. And the thing that we're asking ourselves constantly is, what is our blind spot in terms of the employee experience of the deskless employee? Because one can always think, well, I'm in an office, I've got access to certain things, technology, etc. So it's much easier for me. And we ask ourselves a couple of questions around this in Cebu. And just briefly about the 6 or 7 questions that we ask ourselves. We ask the question in terms of our HR strategy. What is the environment that we want to create to have a sense of community? And what do we actually do? And very important to that is, what is the capabilities of our managers to lead people that is deskless and having the right care and compassion and understanding for their unique needs? And then also, how do we facilitate a safe and easy commute for those employees to their places of work? And what physical and emotional and financial safety and well-being do we provide? And how do we provide it? Because the one thing that we picked up is we make assumptions in terms of what our employees need. And often when we reach out to them, they might say to us, but that's not what I need. I actually need something else. And things like breaks. Do we provide sufficient breaks for them to re-energize and be innovative, etc., and come up with different proposals? And then obviously in terms of the roles, is it roles that has got longevity? Do we need to reskill those roles or people over time? Is it something that would be automated over time or not? And then what's the career pathways we can build around that? And lastly, but not least, is how do we communicate and collaborate and making sure that we really address those needs of people in the organization. So what we've really done was to look at our HR strategy and see how can we specifically target our strategy and align our strategy to the needs of our employees, because we're in the service industry. So you need to be connected to our employees. We've just done an employee experience survey, and more than 50% of our employees participated in the employee experience survey. And the previous one was done in 2019, before the pandemic. And we are very pleased to say that from an employee experience and engagement perspective, all our scores have actually increased. And that to me is superb, because I think during the COVID pandemic, we were so focused on communicating with our employees and making sure that we are more focused and targeted in terms of their needs. That I think that has really helped us in terms of honing in on that.
Thank you very much, Ilani. Bridget, Nando's the brand is known for its vibrant and cheeky advertising campaigns. But I'm sure our audience is interested in finding out, how does this translate via the company's internal communication with its employees?
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you. What you see insofar as the brand and the quirkiness, it certainly resonates internally as well. So we refer to our employees as nandockers. So just from a terminology in terms of what I'm going to be chatting about, and really around the nandocker experience. So 90% of our staff are deskless. They're all based in the restaurants and cashiers or grillers. So we have a very small central support base, actually. So we have a couple of internal communication platforms that we use. The one is a WhatsApp line that really was born in the pandemic, when we realized we had to have sort of, immediate contact with our NANDOCers around sort of emergency communication, really, what to do in COVID, what are the lockdown levels saying, what safety precautions need to be in place. That has evolved to be something really, really super sexy. I know my team is on the call. All credit to the team. I've been with Nando's for 5 months, so this is certainly not my brainchild at all. But yeah, that WhatsApp line has evolved to leave queries, to climate surveys. Ilani, we just recently used that WhatsApp line to conduct our climate survey. And we had over 80% completion rate. So we're very, very, chuffed with that. We use it for various campaigns. We use it for various competitions now. We use it for messaging around wellness matters. So the line is very, very active and well embedded. Another platform that we have is our radio station called Heatwave. And that broadcasts every morning into our restaurants with different themes and content. On a Wednesday, we continue with sort of a Wellness Wednesday program with various themes and topics. On a Thursday, we have sort of a learning and development slot. And for the rest, we have, a DJ, and that plays throughout all our restaurants to Friday. And then another platform that we have is our sort of written comms platform, which is referred to as Perivine, which is our publication. And we have the internal sort of comms marketing team supporting us around articles in there, competitions, activities, what our NANDOCers are getting up to. So it's also a crazy fun platform. Just another story that I'd share in terms of the WhatsApp line. We've just recently launched sort of a campaign around communication on vaccinations and sort of debunking any myths that may be out there. Because we haven't had much of an uptake in terms of people loading their vaccinations to see sort of, the percentage of our NANDOCers that are vaccinated or not. And we've done a really cool campaign where we actually have a medical doctor who sort of talks to the medical side of, and it's all done on this WhatsApp, very, very visual rich. To Caroline, to your point, not everybody is so sort of digital and tech savvy, but ours are mostly sort of video based and sort of short, sharp, punchy clips. So we have a medical doctor debunking any myths and encouraging folk to get vaccinated. And then we also have a traditional healer that we've made a video clip of as well. And really her role is around encouraging people to get vaccinated as well. So some really great stuff that we put through those platforms.
Yeah, traditional healer is one that's caught me off guard there. So most people would shudder at the thought of seeing a sangoma, but having a sangoma in the workplace communication, how does that come about?
We think it resonates certainly with our external facing brand communication, and so we feel it's appropriate to Nando's and how we communicate with our staff. So it's been well received.
Okay. Well, Nando's always pushing the envelope as per usual. I'd like to come back to maybe we can discuss the whole issue of WhatsApp, which is something that you just touched on as well there, Bridget. I do have a poll here that we can launch about, what extent do you use WhatsApp in your own organizations? I know we used to use it quite frequently and have since moved to Slack as well, Caroline, and that's working. I think WhatsApp can be quite a lot if you're using it for work and personal use. I mean, I can't tell you how many groups I'm in. It's almost a pandemic on its own, the WhatsApp groups. But I think organizations are finding it easier to stay in touch with their employees via this platform. So I think I'm just gonna let these results come in and then give you each a chance to respond and maybe elaborate further on the solutions that you've introduced within your organization. We've got 60% of participants who have answered. Please get those numbers up so we can get as good an indication of the results as possible. I'll give it another 10 or so seconds. All right. It's looking like, like ourselves prior to Slack, is that it's pretty commonplace within the organization, people setting up projects and so forth. All right, I'm going to end the poll, and this is where we are. Only 5% of you do not use WhatsApp at all in your organization, and I wonder what kind of organizations those are. I only use it to communicate with my closest colleagues and team members. That's 32%. And more than half of our attendees here today saying it's pretty commonplace and that you set up group chats for projects and so forth. And 11% saying it's the primary communication tool within the business. So WhatsApp very, very, very popular. Care to share your thoughts on these results, Caroline?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's so interesting to listen to the Nando's case, and I always love hearing about stories where COVID brought about immense innovation in organizations. And how I like to look at it is to talk about meeting employees where they are. So it's true also with the medical doctor and the Sangoma example that Bridget provided as well. You can't have a one-size-fits-all solution, and you have to get creative about and practical about how you talk to people. And in fact, at SmartWage, we deliver our earned wage access product via WhatsApp, and we found that there's so little friction to an employee using that service that it's become our largest channel. So we have a USSD channel as well, but about 97% of our engagement comes through WhatsApp. And it's simply because employees are already there. And we discussed it earlier. 100% of people have a device, and 100% of people are checking that device multiple times a day. So how do you reach them with the most important information? You reach them where they already are. And so we've started to roll out a series of features trying to also meet HR's needs, where employees can get things like pay slips and check their leave balance, etc., to save a lot of admin time for HR teams, and also to deliver employees the information that they want instantly. And for me, it's about equity. And I think Ilani's approach was really great, is just looking at like the whole person and understanding what that person's journey is, right from home to their transport for work, etc. And understanding that your office employees are essentially getting better services than your deskless employees. How do we bring that up to the most equitable level possible? We have to get creative, and we have to meet them where they are.
Fantastic. Ilani, what are your thoughts on WhatsApp? I mean, some people don't have phones with WhatsApp capabilities, as Caroline mentioned earlier, that it is a stumbling block to communication. But do you guys use it, and how effectively?
Thanks, Ngula. Yes, we do. And I think people sometimes underestimate people in South Africa and the use of technology. People actually love using technology. And we find with our employees across all levels that they do have access to WhatsApp. And we do a hybrid and a combination between SMS messages and also WhatsApps. And also what we find is divisional teams and specific operational teams have their own, I would say, private groups where they do communicate with one another and make sure that the most critical information is being shared. We also embarked with Tsebu's 50th anniversary last year on a WhatsApp platform. And our marketing guys would scold me for not using the right terminology, because I know you get WhatsApp, which is maybe not that secure. deemed to be, and other platforms which uses WhatsApp. Caroline will know it better than me in terms of the right technology or wording, but we definitely use that as a means. And I think the important thing for me is, and that's what we emphasize in our business, is you cannot use technology to replace the importance of face-to-face communication. People need to engage. So there's not one size fits all, and there's not one single thing that's the best. And although I'm very keen on using WhatsApp and other technology, and we even got our employees, more than 70% of them are actually getting their pay slips on private email accounts now. So there is ways and means that you can actually upskill your employees from a digitization perspective, because people are hungry for technology and digitization and new things. But the important thing is you still want that engagement between an employee and the manager. And the feedback that we got from the employee experience survey, that obviously we will explore now in our focus group sessions, would be to ask those questions. So what does effective communication look like for you? When will you feel that your manager cares for you? When will you feel that the organization addresses your specific needs? And it is those specific areas that we are targeting and focusing on. So it's almost like you use a lot of different components to ensure that at the end of the day, you get to the desired result and address the specific needs of your employees.
Yeah, and Bridget, yourselves?
Yeah, I think just to reiterate, Elon and Caroline, we need various tools and various platforms. There's not one size fits all, but it is important to engage your workforce. Ours is a very young workforce. And so, as I said, it has to be relevant and so appropriate to that target audience. And yeah, just making sure that they are sort of, video rich, easy to understand. We make sure, even in our engagement survey, we covered about, I think, 5 languages, so that we're not only communicating in one language. But yeah, our WhatsApp line is working really, really well for us. Over 80% of our staff have engaged on that WhatsApp line, be it a query, be it a question, be it something that we've had to respond to. So it's working extremely well within our portfolio of communication platforms.
All right, sticking on the WhatsApp, I guess we could go straight into the Q&A part of the conversation. We've had Tsidi Dabula, who is the HR director and communications manager at Lafarge, ask, with WhatsApp communication platform and companies, how do you address the data issue? Without the company, these data issues when it comes to phones that were not issued by the company, because data cost is a huge issue. And as one can imagine, Deskless employees tend to be on the lower spectrum when it comes to income. So data is a big issue. And WhatsApp requires data. So I imagine that's a big challenge. One of your colleagues, Samantha De Rooij, I'm not sure if I'm saying her surname correctly there, has answered CD to say that at Nando's, you reverse charge your platforms. For example, the employee engagement survey that received 80% response was hosted on a reverse charged link sent via WhatsApp. Can you elaborate on what that means? What does that mean, that people can access it for free and you?
Yes, there's no charge.
Okay. And is that now with all your engagement approaches, or does it have to be a campaign?
So when they are in the restaurants, we obviously make use of the free Wi-Fi when they are there.
Wow, okay. And Ilani, what the data is a problem. So I guess that's why WhatsApp is not foolproof.
Yeah, I think on the WhatsApp platform that we created for the SEBO 50-year anniversary, it was definitely reverse charge, but that is not our main platform. It was a platform that we are further exploring using. But what you find is with some of these platforms, you pay per message that you send out, so that, and per employee. And with a large workforce, that becomes quite costly. So rather, we would use your WhatsApp platforms that would be more your normal group created platforms. And then at most of our client sites, they would have some access to data. Obviously, you don't send videos, you don't send a lot of data intensive type of messaging, but your basic messaging is not that costly. So that's one of the things. And obviously, being in our industry, we have to be quite careful in terms of expenditure and mindful of that. So at times, it might be more effective to send out SMSs, because then at least, even if the employee does not have access to data in that specific area, they would still get their SMSs, which often prove an easier way to communicate. So it's a balance in terms of different sites, because if you're dispersed, especially in remote areas, data is often a challenge.
Caroline, I mean, on the issue of the WhatsApp, I mean, like Ilani just mentioned, it's companies can use a direct SMS. You can also a lot of phones come with email functionality where you can receive an email on your phone. So why is WhatsApp so popular when phones can achieve just as much with email and direct SMS?
Yeah, well, the truth is many phones do have WhatsApp capabilities that don't in fact have browsers or the ability to have email. So I know Ilani has had an amazing digital transformation with getting people to have emails. But I've had experiences as well with companies who've rolled out systems that expecting their employees to set passwords and get that verification via email, and they simply don't have email. And so it remains a challenge. And again, it comes down to this principle of meeting people where they are. And I do think it's a multi-layered approach. I think that if people prefer email and if that's an option to you, then a multi-channel approach is the best approach. But to make sure you reach the largest number of people, particularly at the lower end of the income spectrum, WhatsApp seems to be the best approach. And again, I say that because we've done a couple of experiments with it, and we use email as our channel as well. We allow people to phone in and interact with our company. And as I say, 97% of the transactions that come through are on WhatsApp, even though people have the choice of calling us or also using a USSD line. And that's another thing. USSD costs the user money in terms of airtime, and WhatsApp costs data. But it's such a fractional amount of data on WhatsApp that we find that people tend to be able to extend themselves to that, as long as you're not sending through content that's too rich. So again, it depends on the context, and we serve employees who earn 3,000 Rand a month right up to much higher echelons of earning, and the needs are different at each of those layers. And I think it's about finding an approach that works for a certain segment of employees. And the easiest way to find this out is just to ask them. And I know that's the best part of my job, is giving a phone call to people who use our services and understanding what their constraints and challenges are. And that way we build a product that suits those people. But WhatsApp is a fan favorite in South Africa. I've spent time in the States where people use iMessage and whatever a lot, and WhatsApp is not less dominant. In South Africa, it's one of the top, it's the most downloaded app in the country.
Yeah, we've got a great comment here from Malile. And she says, to communicate with the organization at large, I found that once you have a platform, work still has to be done to bring employees to the platform and keep them engaged. Otherwise, they feel like it's just boring internal comms if they're not getting something out of it. Do you do similar work, Bridget, to make sure that non-dockers, really are getting and experience out of your engagement initiatives?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I said it's, it's not a one size fits all approach, and it's not only one vehicle communication platform that we are using. And Nando's is a fun brand. So our communication internally, externally, the brand communication you all see, but we have to replicate that internally as well. And so it is fun and it is high energy, and we rely on all platforms, insofar as that. So, even on a Friday, one of our initiatives that we do is Compass Friday, and it's really around espousing our values within Nando's. And each department will sort of be given a value that they need to interpret, and that functional area will then put a playlist together. So if we're talking about family, which is one of our values, then that team will put a playlist together. We are family potentially could be a song that goes on that playlist. And that is distributed throughout the organization, and it's really for everybody to have fun and to celebrate and to listen to the playlist, whilst you're going about your duties. So it's a multitude of platforms, and really, communicating and for the receiver, for the recipient, of that communication.
Thank you. And we have a question here from Ndima. She asks, can someone share ideas on how to keep employees who work remotely engaged, ensuring that they're still connected to the culture of the organization? Now, this is perhaps not for deskless employees, because people who work from home more often than not do have desks. Elani, you do have a cohort of employees who are able to work from home. But are you guys back at the office? And when you were kind of working from home, how did you keep people engaged?
No, so Sangula, we are all back at the office. All employees are back at the office, and the rest of our employees have been working all along, because most of them were essential services employees. So we've been working all along. And also, if you look at our population, at any one stage, only about 600 employees would be office-based. So only about 600 employees at any one stage could work from home. And we are all back at the office. So, but to your point in terms of the question, that is when you start to be creative, make sure that you have a lot of webinars, masterclasses, communication with employees, encouraging managers to have the small check-ins every day with employees to get a sense check of where they are physically, mentally, from a health-wise perspective. Our focus during the whole area was basically on keeping our employees safe and keeping our employees employed, so that the sustainability aspect in terms of keeping the business afloat during difficult times. And then obviously making sure that we engage and care with our employees. And part of that is actually setting time aside to engage properly with an employee. In the beginning, I think you all would know, no one would switch on the
Cameras.
Cameras, yes, Bridget, because I don't know if they were sitting there in their pajamas, etc. I mean, I was sitting in mine a couple of times as well with the dog on my lap. So yes, so it's putting in those rules and measures to say, listen, guys, we need to talk, we need to engage. It's trying to bring in the fun amidst the seriousness of the situation. So I don't know if I'm specific enough, but I think the best way for me is for people to come together. And for people, not all industries can have people working remotely all the time. Several industries in South Africa, you actually need to look each other in the eye. You need to be able to reach out and create that almost connection between people that you don't necessarily do when you speak to someone remotely. But I do think with us going through this whole pandemic, it has really done a lot in terms of our resilience and creating new ways of working where previously we weren't. Even though everybody are back at the office, the previous Friday we had our special comms Friday, where we get people together and talk about the business and share cupcakes and, you know, just create a bit of engagement in a different way in terms of who joined the business in the last couple of months and etc. And that is it was always a monthly institution in our head offices. And now we started doing that again. But this time what we did in our offices, we did it remotely. But we still brought in something tangible for somebody to feel that we are there for them. So it's almost like we in that phase where you need to bridge between, even though we are all together, we're still following all the protocols. So you still need to be careful in terms of how you engage.
Caroline, I mean, we've had a comment here about, you know, how do companies keep employees engaged when some are working from home due to comorbidities, and there's no clear directive from the government if they can come back to work. It's a question from Shitareka Mashaba. How do we balance the needs of the business versus those working from home? It's not directly an engagement or question via WhatsApp, but I mean, surely you have had to balance working from home with coming back to the office as well? You're on mute.
We certainly have. Our company was started right at the start of COVID. So we were a remote first team from day one. And now we've moved towards a more hybrid approach. And so we've dealt with this issue, but I really think Elani has laid it out perfectly. The issue with COVID is that we've had different challenges along the way. So the initial challenge was a lot of fear, and a lot of uncertainty. And how do you create engagement and discuss this with the employees at that stage? And then we move into different discussions, which is, I'm worried about, hey, I want to be a full-time remote worker versus I want to come back into the office. And then there's a different discussion and a different hierarchy of worries and needs. And what Elani said around managers are doing that face-to-face engagement, you can't replace that. It's asking your employees, what are their major concerns and why they're worried about that? And I think that is to the direct benefit of the business. And there's also no harm in being direct with employees and saying, well, the business needs X and we're trying to work towards X and we want to work with you so that we can come to a point where we agree. And I think when you have a very open conversation like that, which is obviously easier said than done, you get to good outcomes. And I think we've all been on a tremendous learning curve during the course of COVID. We've all had to adapt. We've had to start having these conversations more often. But also there's been a lot of innovation. Like Bridget talked about having to switch to their WhatsApp profile really, really quickly. And that means we think differently about the value of remote work versus on-site work, etc. And I think we've just got to keep having the discussion.
And Bridget, one of the issues that keeps coming up in this period post-COVID is mental wellness, with employees really facing a lot of challenges, both financial and otherwise, that is having an impact on their mental wellness. And I think a key part of communication and campaigns or engagement has to be centered around that. How's Nando's gone about, engaging with the employees regarding the mental wellness?
Yeah.
And how has it kind of gotten the uptake that is necessary to make a change? Because we see a lot of organizations, employees are very, I would not say shy, but reluctant to share their mental state, or if they're suffering from mental challenges, not to share with the organization due to the stigma associated with it.
Absolutely. So yes, Nando's is not unique or in isolation of around, sort of mental health, the health issues that the globe, quite frankly, has experienced. And obviously, the COVID pandemic has really exacerbated that. It has exacerbated issues around gender-based violence, alcoholism, addiction, so a myriad of sort of wellness-related matters. And so we definitely have used that WhatsApp platform insofar as communications around all matters relating to wellness, be it mental health, be it financial support that they may require, et cetera, et cetera. So we've had an extensive set of communication in that regard. So that's the one tool. And then secondly, we have a program called Sizani, which is a counseling support program where our Nandokas can phone in on any issue that I've just referenced, be it emotional, be it mental health, be it financial, be it sort of any abusive situations, and make use of that line for us, either sort of telephonic-based counseling or in-person counseling if that is required. But it has been very real for us. The line is used and people do partake in the program. So we're grateful that we have that free of charge. I think that's really important. We know there's no charge to our Nandokas. 24/7.
Lovely. Nalani, what have been kind of as we wrap up, your key campaigns when it comes to communicating and engaging with your employees in recent times?
Yeah, I think our key one very topical issue obviously is stay healthy. It's very important for us, especially our employees engaging in the service industry on different sites to be healthy. So we've adopted mandatory vaccinations. And I can say in South Africa, we've already achieved 75% vaccination rate, which we are very proud of. We've worked very hard towards ensuring that our employees are vaccinated, that we debunk the myths. We have engaged with Discovery to support us specifically on making medical doctors available or having access to some of their learnings and information to support that. Also, in terms of our customers, we've got different type of customers. Some of them very early on were quite adamant that employees need to be vaccinated if they want to work on a site, and certain protocols that needs to be adhered to. So I think being safe and looking after your own well-being, not only your physical well-being from a vaccination perspective, and not contracting the COVID disease, that to us is very important. At one stage, we had over 150 of our employees having COVID. Now we have about 2 people that's got COVID at present, and we do believe it's due to the vaccinations, and obviously that's what what the medical profession also tells us, and we always take a medical view in terms of our lead and direction on it. I think the other one that is very important for us, especially in terms of alignment to getting the economy boosted, etc., we also create opportunities to build a high-performance culture. So very important for us, how important employees are to our business, what role they play in the business, how we can work together to grow the business. So we really drive messaging around our high-performance culture, and linked to that would be a lot of recognition campaigns linked to our values and the importance of that. Obviously, a lot of our customers also have campaigns where they want our employees to be part of that. So I would say in terms of high performance culture, driving that, and the safety of our employees, critical importance to us at this moment in time.
Okay, that brings us to the end. Maybe Caroline, you can wrap up for us, maybe give us a summary of everything we've heard today, and then maybe something for the attendees to take away from this conversation.
Of course. Thank you, Sangula. I think I've learned more than anybody else today from Ilani and Bridget. So I'm really appreciative that you both joined us. And I guess my key takeaways are around, firstly, just making sure that you're talking to your employees and figuring out what it is they want to hear, where it is that they want to hear that. And I think that we've learned about the different contexts that you have at Nando's and at Sebo as well, and among some of our clients. So I think that that's, meeting employees where they are is a big takeaway. And the second thing is really that there has to be a multifaceted approach. We've got to lean into technology and creative ideas and understand that we're not going to find one perfect solution that solves all our problems, but we constantly have to be working towards using the latest technology and adopting new practices and taking a multifaceted approach to achieve our objectives, and just really keeping that objective at the center of what we do, because I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is that they think about what something will look like. They don't think about what it's actually going to achieve down the line. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And I hope everybody who dialed in learned a lot too. Thank
you so much. And that's it for ourselves here today. Thank you, Ilani. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Caroline. And thank you to each of you who've been on the call. It's been a fantastic hour of learning. And we'll catch you next time on the CHRO South Africa webinar. Cheers and goodbye.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.